Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you the top things successful sales teams do during lockdown. So just to start, we've got two presenters on the session this morning. I'm Wynand Ruiz, the sales director and co-founder at the CRM team. Just a little bit of background. I've been quite fortunate to be in a leadership role in sales teams and pre-sales teams at organizations like Microsoft, SAP, and SaaS over the last sort of 15 to 20 years. And the one thing that I find is there's consistency in the science of sales, and hopefully we're going to share some of those ideas and some of those topics this morning as well. I've also got my business partner, Paul Slade, on the session this morning. Paul is going to answer some of the questions, and he might interrupt every now and again with some thoughts and ideas based on some of the questions coming through and based on some of the comments that he wishes to make as we go through the session itself. Now, what I wanted to do before I start going into the details of what top sales teams do during this lockdown time is I wanted to highlight some of the key points that our customers and prospects share with us when we go and meet with them. So things like, what are the sales challenges that our customers experience? And some of these might be familiar with you as well. So let's just highlight those so that we can see how they're typically addressed. So the first one is, I hear sales leaders and sales managers and sales directors tell us that I don't know how productive my sales team is right now. I mean, they're working, they're busy, but busy doesn't mean productive. Busy doesn't mean that it's outcomes-based. So I have no idea how productive and how effective my sales teams are right now. They also say that I don't know if there's a correlation between sales activity and output. I've got guys that are working overtime and throughout the night, but I don't see the effect in their numbers. And then I see guys that have 2, 3, 4 sales calls and their numbers are made. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what are those activities? What are those characteristics that differentiate the guys that make their number from the guys that don't? I also hear that I don't know where my salespeople are spending their time and whether they're effective. I don't know which prospects are wasting our time. So this is one that's quite common that we get quite often, is you do quotes, you do proposals, you respond to RFPs, never to hear from these customers again. So what are they doing? Are they just comparing prices? Are they really interested in your services? And if you can't remember what the last quote looks like, we've had scenarios where two different quotes with two different prices were sent from two different teams in the same business unit. And it creates chaos within those customer organizations. I also don't know how to segment my existing customer base, and how do I create a white space analysis? How do I identify where to upsell and where to cross-sell based on my current understanding of customers? I'm wasting so much time correlating Excel spreadsheets when I should be coaching my team. So this is another common one that we see with customers where a sales director or sales manager is spending a week, a month, trying to correlate changed Excel spreadsheets that the sales teams have updated in order to do a forecast back to business. I don't know if my marketing engine is creating quality leads. I don't think they do, but I'm not sure. It takes on average 12 prospect engagements or 12 engagement with a lead to close a deal. Are we disqualifying these leads too soon? So are my guys getting discouraged by phoning a lead once or twice, not following up with a WhatsApp and a message and an email? Aren't we touching them enough and then disqualifying those leads only to lose the business to competitors? We haven't enabled a low-cost sales engine to cater for those less profitable customers. Salespeople are hell of an expensive. So you can't go and see the rats and mice on a daily basis, but you don't necessarily want to lose those rats and mice to your competitors, because a rat can grow. Well, I want to say a rat could grow into a cat, but that's highly impossible. But those small companies can grow into bigger companies with your assistance and with your help. I don't know how much time my team wastes creating mediocre proposals and quotes that don't convert. I mean, I don't know if our CI is adhered to. I don't know if our terms and conditions are adhered to. Are we taking out line items or exclusions that might dramatically affect or impact us in the long run? And then the last one is, how do I ensure that I'm not the bottleneck, but I still control or tightly control my margins? So another thing that we're seeing in tough times like this and challenges that our customers have is all of a sudden the sales director or sales manager micromanages everything. So every quote has to go through them. Every opportunity needs to be signed off by them, and you're not actually enabling your sales team, and it becomes very impossible to scale. Now, if the reality is we can actually go on and on and on, but there's not enough time in this little session to cater for all of these scenarios that we see our customers are concerned about or are challenges for them currently. Things like profitability, things like, are their salespeople leaving? Things like, can they retain their salespeople? So there's a list of these concerns or these challenges that our customers face. Fortunately, every challenge is an opportunity. So we're going to highlight the 5 things that successful teams do during lockdown. So let's just get straight into it. The first thing that top sales teams do during lockdown is they don't stop marketing. So this is essential. To stop marketing at this point in time is business suicide. And typically, this is the first thing that gets cut. So you stop Google AdWords, you stop advertising on social media. Your previous ways of advertising in the past, for example, things like flyers, things like banners, things like the radio, for that matter, is no longer effective. Also, spray and pray marketing into your entire customer base via email and SMS is a guaranteed way to piss your customers off, as opposed to really retain them and keep them or excite them about the offering that you've got. So what we see these top companies are doing at the moment is that they don't stop marketing. They're actually just marketing more effectively. Now, I've borrowed a concept from a guy called Andrew William Smith. I highly recommend that you go and follow him on Facebook. He's got really nice tips and ideas of things that you can do for your business during this time. So I highly recommend to go and have a look at him on Facebook. But he's got this concept of a peacock, or I want to say peacocking, but that's something completely different. So the concept here is that your website at this point in time has to be your most important marketing and sales asset. But you have to ask yourself the question, what does my website say about my business? Is my website set up in such a way that it converts? Do I entice people to engage with me on my website? Do I allow people to interact with me on my website? So it's critically important to understand that marketing has shifted a lot further down the sales cycle than it used to. So, for example, customers nowadays or prospects nowadays go and do research. And if they're doing research on the websites of your competitors because your content is not up to date or your website isn't enticing, it doesn't really cater for engagement, guess what? They're going to go to your customers. So this concept of peacocking is using all of the different services that are available to you to ultimately go and attract action and activity to your website in the form of a peacock. So it typically looks like this. Now, if I look at some of these components, for example, Facebook marketing. Facebook marketing is one of the most incredible marketing engines that uses AI to really target very specific customers with a very specific message. I'm sure all of you have seen that sometimes it seems like you just thought of a specific topic or a product, and the next time you open Facebook, that topic or product is highlighted. It seems like when you have a WhatsApp chat with your mates, when you open up Facebook, for some odd reason, they know about what that chat was about. One of the things that I'm quite fascinated by in this Facebook scenario is I recently started looking at new bicycles during this time. And when I open up Facebook, you can see the guys that are targeted, that has a very specific message, and that knows exactly what I was looking for a road bike and an indoor trainer. They don't push mountain bikes or that kind of thing in that session. The same applies with things like LinkedIn. When you run email campaigns, the objective should be to bring traffic to your website. Google AdWords, you need to be on top. You need to ensure that your search engine optimization is structured in such a way that if people are looking for your products and services, that you can actually bring that activity into your website. And then lastly, you know, things like webinars and email signatures, all of those capabilities should ultimately come to your website. So the second thing that successful sales teams do during this time is they give their existing customers extra special love and attention. I mean, you really have to. These guys are the guys that are currently paying your salaries. And for some odd reason, there's a disconnect in many companies where you spend so much money acquiring new customers or trying to acquire new customers that you actually that you're actually forgetting about your existing customers. So at this point in time, it's quite important to get a thorough understanding of where I can upsell and cross-sell and add value to my existing customers. Something as simple as just adding value, going to your customers and sitting with them and understanding and sharing with them some thoughts as to how they can survive during this time, how they can thrive during this time with some of the ideas and some of the products that you might have. The important thing to remember, though, is that not all customers are equal. If you don't do a scientific segmentation, because the problem is many companies do a segmentation, but then for some odd reason, some of the customers that shout the loudest get added to that top right-hand quadrant because, just because of mere activity and the time that you spend with them. But if you actually look at year-to-date financials, how much they've actually spent with your business, and you combine that with future opportunity, you might see that they actually don't fit in that specific space. So it's critical to really segment your customers effectively. We've also seen with one of our customers that they did some segmentation, but they didn't take all of the aspects or all of the data into consideration that might affect segmentation, and they were actually segmenting some of their customers incorrectly. So as a result of them giving them this insight, they could then optimize. So for example, seasonality had an effect on their customers. And just because the customer has a typical down season, they would downscale that customer, which is a very big mistake to do. So it's critical to really segment your customer base at this point in time. And there are some customers that you need to disinvest in, low value, low opportunity. In some of my research, I love this scenario that Harvard Business Review referred to. So they saw that one of the companies did an analysis of their customer base and found that any customer or any sale that was smaller than $2,000 was giving them a lot of hassles. These were the customers that typically asked questions and wanted to speak to a salesperson and complained about the services, because for them, $1,000 was the same as for a big company, a $10,000 deal was. So what these guys did is they ultimately fired or prevented the sales team from engaging in any deals smaller than $2,000. And the next quarter, they started making their number for the first time in a very long time because there was no distractions. Their team was focused on the things that actually contribute to sales. At the CRM team, we also had quite an interesting scenario. We had to fire one of our customers because they were verbally abusing my staff, and that was absolutely not on. That's not something that we tolerate. So as opposed to just letting them go, we decided to introduce them to one of our biggest competitors. And we received feedback sort of 3 months into the project that these guys were having a terrible time. So I mean, it's in retrospect, I don't think it's a nice thing to do, but it's something to think about in terms of times like this. So if we look at the third thing, is these top companies monitor key performance indicators. And as a matter of fact, they have found that if you monitor key performance indicators, it doesn't only increase the productivity of your sales team, because people know exactly what they measured on, people know exactly what you're looking for in the activities and the things that they do, but it also increased morale. So if your salespeople know exactly what you're going to be measuring and exactly what you're going to be looking for, it makes it a lot easier for them to drive the right behaviors and ultimately drive the outputs that you're looking for. Now, just the one thing that I want to mention here based on experience is that you can't actually manage a number. So I don't care how scientific your Excel spreadsheet looks or how much time you spend with formulas in your Excel spreadsheet. Spending time in a spreadsheet manipulating numbers is not actually going to make your number. Spending time with your sales team, driving the sales behavior and the right behaviors and enabling them and training them on the right things to do is the only thing that can actually make your number. Identifying white space opportunity is the things that make your number. Staring and manipulating an Excel spreadsheet to make your number is not ever going to make your number. So obviously there's a host of KPIs available for organizations to measure, and we typically recommend a few when we engage with our customers and with our prospects. It goes into a lot further detail. So obviously this is a terrible slide to share, but from a reference perspective, it's quite important because these are the metrics that you're looking at when you have a highly effective sales team. You want to look at stuff like sales productivity. Are your customers seeing more of your salespeople? Are they making more calls? Do you have shorter sales cycles? Are you improving your revenue per customer? Are you re-engaging customers that you might have lost in the past? So there's a host of metrics and key performance indicators that an organization can measure. And obviously, we're going to share these with you in order to either increase the revenue or save or reduce some cost within the organization itself. So that was number 3. Number 4 is companies that are successful stay focused on what they know and what they do best. So unless your organization can re-platform and repurpose to do personal protective equipment or hand sanitizer, now is not the time to diversify and add a whole bunch of products that you don't have experience in, that you're unsure about. For example, we focus on customer intelligence and CRM based solutions. If we all of a sudden decide now to do ERP systems, it might be a new opportunity because there's opportunity in the market, but we are going to make serious mistakes by trying to do that right now, not having the resources, not having the background, and it might be a new revenue opportunity for us at the moment, but these kinds of things sink companies in the long run. So it's quite important to focus and stay with the things that you know at this point in time. It doesn't, however, mean that you shouldn't stop innovating. So now is a good time to look for new suppliers or updates to products or new innovations in the field that you're in. For example, if you're in security, what is happening in security? Should you be thinking about new suppliers, for example? So it really is a time to innovate, because if you're just going to stop and stagnate, I mean, your competitors are going to outperform you as well. So some of the things that customers that are successful do at the moment is they update the unique selling proposition. So they think about things like what makes them special, what makes them different. They figure these things out, and that's what they then hammer from a marketing perspective. So it's really time to figure out what those things are within your business, and then really honing in on that from a marketing perspective. And then the last thing that successful companies do at this point in time is they don't look and act desperate. The worst thing that you can do now is just to slash prices, or to all of a sudden half your quotes, because customers actually pick that up from a value perspective, and they realize that your existing customers firstly realize that they overpaid for a product that they could get a lot cheaper, because clearly you're making a hell of a lot of margin if you can cut your prices in half, or if you can give 50, 40, 30% discount. So they experience that from that perspective. And your new customers as well, just by nature, they get put off by the stench of desperation. So companies that are successful right now stand their ground. They focus and hone in on the value that their products actually bring to organizations, as opposed to speaking about the products themselves. They really focus on the return on investment. They really focus on the value that can be achieved by selecting or leveraging their products, as opposed to just selling widgets or just cutting price at this point in time. So the question is then, how can the CRM team help and assist you enable your team? So there's really two things that we wanted to highlight in this webinar this morning, that we believe makes a big difference to organizations. The first one is Power BI reports and templates. So having done these kinds of insights and templates and reports for organizations and dashboards for organizations, we've managed to build up quite a template structure that we can very quickly enable for organizations, irrespective of whether they have a Microsoft ERP or CRM platform. So this is not dependent on a Microsoft environment. We can connect to other environments like Sage, SAP, even Salesforce.com for that matter. So these kinds of insights allow you to really get a thorough understanding of what's happening within your business, and you can really configure these to give you the key attributes that you're looking for. One of our customers, it's actually a reference customer, so I'm going to name them, Vitality Life. One of the guys, or one of the team members, senior team members in that team, actually has Power BI dashboards on his phone. So when the operations director walks through the floor, he can actually scroll through on his iPhone, on his watch, and have a look at the tiles and quickly say, we're currently sitting at a conversion rate of 30%, but it is still early during the day. We know statistically that it only starts picking up from about 2 o'clock. So our peak times is between 2 and 5. So we definitely think that this is going to pick up. So it really allows us to get those insights quickly. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having the ability to create a single customer view. You can't create targeted marketing or a white space analysis unless you have a comprehensive view of what your customers look like today. And some of the key things that we speak about there is demographic data, transactional data, behavioral data. And these kinds of data sources typically sit in different places. I mean, my transactional data sits in my point of sale system. It sits in my ERP system. My behavioral data sits on the website. What am I doing when I log on to your e-commerce website? What am I doing when I interact via emails or when I phone your contact center? And demographic data might sit in your CRM system, for example. But unless you holistically combine all of this data to really get a comprehensive view of what your customers entail and what they look like, it's really impossible to do targeted marketing to focus and hone in on the things that you want to upsell and cross-sell to that customer base. So what Microsoft has done is they've released a platform called Customer Insights or Dynamics Customer Insights that connect to most data sources. So it doesn't matter whether you run Oracle, whether you run SAP, whether you run Salesforce, whether you run Sage. It doesn't really matter what those systems are, those point of sale systems, ERP systems, CRM systems, Excel spreadsheets for that matter. Many organizations still keep customer data in Excel spreadsheets. So we use existing connectors to connect to those data sources that ultimately allows us to map, match, and merge your data in order to get a common understanding of what your customers do based on their demographic, transactional, and behavioral data. We then put that through analytics and machine learning. It's all part of the platform as it stands, and that can then be consumed in a variety of ways. You can report on those. You can enable those through targeted marketing lists. You can consume it through Power Apps in the Power Platform. You can update your ERP systems with that information. But what is important is the output of that is the single common understanding of what your customers do. What is your customer lifetime sales at this point in time? How much do they contribute? How much opportunities are open and exist against that customer? How many leads? What is the qualification rate? What is our conversion rate? What are they doing on our website? How are we interacting with them? So every time they log on to our mobile app, or if they send and receive an email or interact on social media, all of those events are ultimately tracked in the single environment or the single understanding of what those customers are. And we then use machine learning to ultimately determine what we need to market to those individuals that we can then interact with. So those were really just two things that we wanted to highlight that we see companies benefit of directly and very quickly in this time. So obviously you don't want to spend months before you get this, and by that time the virus is over and people are mobile. Not that that's going to positively necessarily affect your business in the next 6 months. So whatever you put in place now needs to carry through for the next 6 to 12 months. So those are the two things that we see highly contribute to customer value at this point in time.
Ivana, just a quick mention on that. I mean, obviously, if any of the folks have been watching some of the other webinars, you would have seen some of the bot capability that's been showcased. And bots are an amazing way of helping at least address a lot of the questions and some of the volume that you would have gotten in the marketplace right now, whether that's in sales or even in customer service. The last tool that you just spoke about is a critical component of making sure that the bot is not just a dumb service that effectively collects an email address, a conversation history, and sends it to someone to respond to. What this tool set actually does is it allows the bot to consume the data and almost do it in real time to be able to respond to a customer based on understanding what is Wynand's last transaction, or what are the last 3 transactions that Wynand had with you that is currently contacting you about, or what do people that look like Wynand typically need in terms of information in the sales process based on some simple questions that the bot can ask. So those things begin to go hand in hand and ultimately build up a single platform that enables you to really leverage that single understanding of your customer.
That's 100% right. That's 100% right.
So final thoughts before you jump onto that. There are a couple of questions. Would you like to address those after the final thoughts, or drop the final thoughts and then we can answer those
I think let's definitely answer the questions before we close out with some final thoughts.
Right. Okay, so the first question comes from anonymous. So I don't know how that comes through the platform, but the question is related to the comment you made about not acting desperate. And
Yes.
It effectively says, is collecting debt during this time being desperate? What are your thoughts?
It definitely isn't. So I mean, the reality is, and I'm flabbergasted by this. As a matter of fact, so even companies that are operating during this time, where it's business as usual, are stopping paying their rent, are stopping paying their vendors and their suppliers and their partners at this point in time. And the reality is, at a time like this, cash is king. So, with a little bit of uncertainty or a level of uncertainty as to what the economy is going to look like once this is over, with the rand sitting at 20 rand to the dollar, you have to collect from those customers. It doesn't mean that you can't be empathetic to or have empathy towards their situation and their current scenario, but you need to collect what is due and what is owed. That's definitely not a case of desperation. Also, you might incentivize those customers to collect by giving them a 2% discount for early collection, or whatever that metric looks like, or use that as an opportunity to further build a relationship. So on the collection side, if you do, that you need to do everything in your power to collect cash at this point in time, because cash is king. Where that thought comes in is from a sales perspective. If you start begging for the work, people are put off by that, and they can see that you're desperate. So one of two things is going to happen. The first one is they're either going to take complete advantage of you, further discount your products and services, and what's going to happen is, because you can't profitably then deliver on those projects and services, your team's going to feel that when they have to deliver those services, and they know that they're doing it for almost free or at cost at this point in time. So that's the one thing, is customers will take advantage of that capability, and the result is that the quality will suffer. Customer experience will suffer as a result of that. The other thing is that they'll just be put off by the fact that all of a sudden your services are actually only worth half of what they used to be. And that just speaks for itself. But collecting cash like that, you have to get down to doing that right now. So focus teams, focus effort. We speak in our business about violence of action. So you have to really with deep action go and collect.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with everything you said, and I think it's probably just related to how you say these things as well, which is obviously a very important point. If you are going out and having these conversations, think very much about your style and your approach. And in many cases, as Bainan said, being open and pretty honest and direct with the folks you're dealing with, that'll give you a very good sense of where you're at. It'll give them a good sense of where you're at. Collect your outstanding debts, work on that effectively. I think that's only fair and all good. So the other question is related to the second part of the two things that you said the CRM team can offer our customers. And that is that the single view is the holy grail. It's what everyone has been trying to do since 1995, when CRM was first mentioned as a term. And most companies that have attempted this have completely failed, but all of them have spent millions and millions, in some cases of dollars, trying to get this right. Is this the case in our scenario number two?
So that is a great question. So the reality is, yes. In the past, companies spent millions and millions of rands on building data warehouses. The problem with the data warehouse is that typically you need a primary key that's consistent between all of the different data sources that you want to combine to bring the data into the data warehouse. So that is quite a complex thing to do. And if any dynamic changes during that process, then it's your data warehouse becomes out of sync. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's typically not real-time data. So, and not that I'm saying that real-time data is always required, but it's typically not real-time data. It's sort of a day old in many instances, or 8 hours old in many instances. So that's the second component that affects these data warehouses. And the third component is that companies don't trust that data. Now, if you don't trust the data and you're still speculating and you can't really run a hypothesis to determine that some of your gut feels are either correct or incorrect, you're not going to leverage that data in the right way. So what makes customer insights dramatically different to a data warehouse, for example, and in many instances, we still leverage a data warehouse to get real-time data or updated data or as near real-time data into the system as possible. As Paul mentioned, we typically connect bots to the system so that if I interact with it, it knows what my last transaction is, and it skips a whole bunch of processes and defers customers before they actually call the contact center. So what makes this difference is we use the Power Automate connectors that exist for most data sources and most databases today, and then use AI to make inferences of the data in order to create that customer view, or that single customer concept. And that gets updated on a very frequent basis. Now, the AI is what makes this different to the typical data warehouses, because I could in one system have Wynand at the crmteam.com with a W Ruiz as my name. In another system, I could have Wynand R, but my company name is the CRM team. Customer Insights uses the AI capability to understand that the name in the email address is the same name that I've got within my company or with my business, and then makes an inference and says there's a 90% chance that these are the same people. And you can then set these thresholds to say, well, if there's a 90% chance, automatically merge those customer records into a single record so that we can then understand what their buying patterns, behavioral patterns, demographic data, all of those understandings are. So we've seen absolutely great success and very quick turnaround times by implementing the solution for customers because of the insights that it generates. The other thing that I didn't mention that's quite specific around that is that it has built-in propensity models and built-in churn models. So it will do things like cluster customers and say, these customers have the following behaviors, therefore we recommend that the following products are associated to them based on those behaviors. So this is really what makes this different, is as opposed to spending 6 to 12 months building a data warehouse, we get these systems up in 2 to 3 months. So it makes a significant difference in organizations.
Absolutely. It's weeks and months and not years and years, or maybe decades in some of the other cases that we've spoken about before. There's 2 final questions, or maybe a third that's snuck in there. If I can ask, Juice, you've actually added a question. Can I ask you to elaborate on that slightly, and then we'll address that. It is related to the customer insights discussion. But as a result, I'm going to open up Peter's question first. And Peter says, would you suggest that an in-house IT team build a company-specific CRM, or rather outsource to have it built and extended? What would the time and cost implication typically be?
So this has been an age-old debate, and I'll give you my contact details just after this, because we've got some documentation that speaks to build versus buy and the implications of that. So there's clearly benefit in having an internal team build your CRM system, because it's built on your processes, it's built on your IP, it's built on your understanding of how these these products work within your business. But what we typically see, and we see this more and more within organizations, is that you need to maintain the development team that ultimately builds that solution for the business. And the IP sits with 2 or 3 people in that business. And what tends to happen is the people with that IP, that wants to grow, or that excels at what they do because they built such an awesome system for your business, leaves your business, and then it becomes chaos. So there's many systems that we have to take over where it was built on an old technology. It was built on I can't even remember, Delphi. We've had scenarios where things were built on Delphi, and now no one has Delphi skills, and they can't find someone to maintain that system or update it. So that's the first challenge that we see companies have with that specific scenario. The second one is for very simple things that should just exist, and I hate it when that concept comes up. Obviously, it should just do this. Might take weeks, might take months, and goes on the backlog for these 3 or 4 or 5 guys building your internal system. So you have to wait quite a long time to actually get this functionality, as opposed to when you invest in a tool set like Microsoft Dynamics, for example. They've taken best practices from a variety of customers over the last, since 2003. So over the last sort of 18 years, and embedded that within the application as it stands today. It's already integrated with applications like Outlook and Teams and Word and Excel and these productivity tools that your teams use at the moment already, where that comes as part of a checkbox, as opposed to a development team still having to figure out how the SDK works to ultimately make that real within their business. So obviously there's a license cost, so there's a trade-off that one needs to take into consideration. But the way that these tools are built, and it's terrible for companies like us, I'll just put it out there, projects that used to take us 6 months or that used to take us 9 months only takes us 3 months to deliver nowadays, because these systems are so rich and can be tweaked and tailored so quickly. It doesn't require a developer anymore. We use our developers purely for integration. We don't use it for configuration of the CRM system because we don't need to. It's intuitive enough, and it can adapt and transform to actually meet your requirements. And in some cases, we see that customers limit their future requirements based on their current constraints and current understanding of how our system works, which that mold is opened and broken quite quickly. So I'll send you some information on build versus buy and the trade-offs between the two. But yes, that's really what we see from a customer perspective. Unfortunately, the biggest thing is the people with the IP leave. And it takes a long time to get simple things out of that system, or things that should be simple out of that system, where if you look at a company like Microsoft, they've got huge R&D budgets that they throw at these problems. And really the way that these solutions are presented and come out today, within a few weeks, you up and running, and you've got world-class methodologies and processes built into that solution.
I love that statement. There were a lot of R&D budgets. It's pretty much the greatest understatement of the year, I think. I'm going to go back to Juice's question. Her question was, can I configure insights for just a specific set of people and not the entire organization? And I asked her to elaborate, or him, I'm assuming, only a few users in the sales team need to see the insights, not the entire team. So can they configure it just for some folks and not for others? And maybe we need to just explain a little bit more around that.
Okay, so the answer is most definitely. So it really depends on the outcomes that you're looking for in configuring that solution. So if you as the management team or as leaders want to create that white space analysis and run a hypothesis on the data to try and figure out what you should be promoting and what you should be focusing on from a business perspective, you can really isolate that based on the security privileges that the solution provides by default to that set of users or that group of people that need to make these decisions. However, we see that the more you empower the entire team with information that they can leverage, there's nothing worse than when we engage with companies and it's only the sales director that contributes towards what the CRM system needs to do for them or towards the reports that need to be created for them without taking into consideration the value that these things have to add to the actual salespeople's day-to-day lives. Because I don't want to add administrative overhead to a salesperson's life. There's nothing worse than having to come in on a Monday morning and sitting late on a Friday afternoon, updating my CRM system. I want to do my day-to-day work. I want to schedule my meetings in Outlook. I want to use my mobile phone to phone my customers. And I expect all that activity to sit in the CRM system and get tracked automatically. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I want the AI in those systems to give me insights, to prompt me on things that I should be thinking about, things that I should be speaking to the customer about. So if you're using customer insights and you're actually enabling a salesperson with some key information, because once again, you can expose certain parts of the outcomes that you get from using customer insights, those very specific parts, to those salespeople. They don't have to see the entire picture, but those components can make a huge difference in the conversations that they have with their customers and the outcomes that drives. So definitely the privileges and permissions allows you to be very specific as to what you can and can't share. But yeah, it's all about enablement and driving the right conversations.
Absolutely agree with that. I mean, technology as a tool set should be serving us as humans and not the other way around. We always talk about that master-slave relationship. If there's a master Excel spreadsheet going around, someone's a slave to it. And we don't want that to be the case in any of these kinds of solutions that we build. We want the solution to, as much as possible, serve the individuals using it and the greater business around it. So hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, please let us know and we'll get back to you in some more detail. And there are a couple more questions sneaking in. The one, again, related to data is that we have all of this data. However, we do not have the capacity nor the expertise to filter this and to use it positively. Do you suggest a special, in inverted commas, sales CRM team be allocated to utilize this info to increase sales and client interactions on a weekly basis?
So my answer is obviously going to be biased, but there's like a little tweak in that question that I'll get back to in just a second. So the first answer is you could. I mean, technically, you could go and acquire customer insights. You can phone your account manager at First Technology Group and acquire customer insights and work with it and figure it out and spend 3-6 months trying to figure that system out. Or alternatively, we sort of engage in weekly iteration. So within a month or two, we brought all of the data sources in. We've matched and merged the data that has come in, and we generate the outcomes that you should be looking at. Now, the key thing here is we only have to connect to those data sources once. And even if we in future want to bring on more data sources, we don't have to break any of the things that we did in the past. It just brings that data in, goes through the same process, and then runs the output. Now, by configuring that process once, it will consistently then give us output. So once it's configured, you don't need a special CRM team or a special resource or a special person to then maintain that system for you going forward. You don't have to use us to interpret that data on a weekly basis, for example, because the outputs that you've configured and that you consume will give you these insights that you can use to then target the right customers with the right products and services from that perspective. So yes, the way that you consume it doesn't necessarily need maintenance, and the time to value is what's important in this process. Having done this now for multiple customers, this is actually a very new product that was released only last year, and we've had incredible success in configuring this for a multitude of customers, and the ROI pays itself within the first 2 or 3 months, just purely based on things that we either had a gut feel about, but we didn't know, hypothesis that we wanted to test, but we didn't know, targeting and segmenting customers based on actual facts and data, promoting products that people are actually interested in on a social platform as opposed to just randomly, wasting money on those platforms. So we've seen the ROI turn itself around extremely, extremely quickly.
Yeah. And Werner, we don't add to the cost of trying to get these things to actually generate a return on investment by throwing more people at the problem. So you don't want to have special teams. You want to make sure that the folks on the ground are really enabled to go and be much more effective. Now, it does raise quite a few other points. And guys, I can understand why a few of you feel a bit overwhelmed by this. What I wanted to say is we have a very simple approach to making this work. And what we effectively do before we even undertake any of these projects, we actually do a data maturity audit. We actually look at where your data lives, how you deal with your data, and there's a score that comes out of that. And that score plots you on a data maturity curve. And the outcome of that is it tells you exactly what to do next. It's not rocket science, it's data science. So we'll be able to leverage that and help you through the process. It's a beautiful, simple outcome. And what we're always seeing is that it gets used later on as we sort of see the progression through a project. What stage do we reach? What is the benefit? What are the next steps that have to be undertaken? And it's a great privilege to see companies improving and leveraging their data more effectively. We're going to address the last question here. And then, as Werner mentioned earlier, we're going to share our contact information. You're welcome to contact us after this, or contact your First Tech account manager, and they'll work directly with us as well. So the last question is, with regards to digital marketing and semi-automated sales funneling of leads, what platforms or methods do you find has the best conversion rate, best ROI on average? And Werner, I think we should break it into 2 components. The one is the platform, and we know that there's tons of great platforms out there that can do this. The other component is the strategy and how you actually implement these things. So let's talk about it from that point of view.
Okay, so yes, I think obviously once again I'm going to be biased in my answer, but I'm going to try and be as objective as I can be. So there are great platforms out there. So companies like HubSpot, companies like MailChimp, that allows you to automate these messages that goes out to customers, and sort of create a marketing tree or an automated marketing response, or a customer journey for that matter, that says, I'm going to communicate with the customer via email. I'm going to give them 2 days to read it. If they don't read that email, I'm going to follow it up with another email. If they do read the email, I'm going to invite them to a webinar. I'm going to invite them to an interaction. And you want those processes to run so that you can actually automate these solutions at scale. Now, the thing that we see quite often with solutions like MailChimp and HubSpot, which, by the way, we consume a lot of their content. These are great platforms. Is that they're isolated from the sales team. So it's marketing data, and you've got sales data on the other hand. You never have marketing and sales data that ultimately blends together, and that's where the problem comes in, because I can't actually understand the customer journey from a sales perspective and the return on investment when that lead was created and someone responded, or I ran a campaign 6 months ago, but because my sales cycle is 6 months long, I never measured the ROMI on that campaign that I ran when I use something like MailChimp, because it's disconnected from my actual CRM data. So I can't follow the end-to-end customer journey or the end-to-end customer process. So typically, if I look at the platforms that we recommend from a Microsoft perspective, is Dynamics Marketing, or a product set called Click Dimensions, and this allows us to, from the start, from when I've got unknown customers landing on my website based on Google search or whatever that might be. From that data, the pages that they viewed, the system that they used to view those pages, all of that information gets captured through the entire marketing cycle until I get them to name themselves. And once they've named themselves, work with them to ultimately drive them into our sales cycle, where they eventually engage with a salesperson. Now, once again, not all leads are equal. Not all leads convert, or not all leads should convert for that matter. I mean, your conversion rate should get better the more you work with marketing. So the more you give feedback to marketing to say that companies that look like this have a much higher propensity to convert than companies that look like that. And that's where the system starts playing a major role, because now it's taking the marketing data and the actual sales data, and it starts doing lead scoring. So it will tell you that a company of this size, that has this behavior, that have bought these products, that took 6 months to buy, the next time a lead comes in that looks like that, it will get a high score. Where companies with the smaller team, or with a product like this or whatever, we do 2 or 3 quotes for them and they never convert. The next time a lead comes in that looks like that, it scores it lower. Now, what makes that important is that it allows the sales team to focus on the highest priority, or the leads that have the biggest propensity to convert first. We're not saying that you should never look at those other leads, but you shouldn't prioritize those leads. You should focus on the ones that have the highest propensity to convert. And that's really where the return on marketing comes in, by blending that sales data and the outcomes with the marketing data to do these scoring, so that you focus on the right leads at that time.
And those other leads you're talking about, if they're slightly lower on the score, they can be dealt with by least cost channels or less cost channels.
100%. Yeah, so that's, again, where you can put those into a nurture program, or you can put that into, driving them to your website or to a commerce site or whatever, yes, by using the customer journey designed for those specific leads. And you do this at scale. You configure that customer journey once, and every time something acts or looks or whatever, based on what the scoring has determined, it will follow the customer journey designed for them.
That's great, Bernard. So I think we've got 2 minutes left. Just to summarize on that, I mean, obviously we're focusing a little bit on the Microsoft platform there, which is exactly the platform we've chosen as a business to work with. Bearing in mind, when we started this business, we had the opportunity to go and evaluate loads of other platforms. The reason we chose the Microsoft stack is it really is a unified one. It's also one that's extremely secure and allows us to very simply automate processes across the entire business. And if you think about it at the very highest level, we're able to analyze, act on that data and then on that analysis that we've done, understand what that action actually gives us, and ultimately then automate that to drive these kinds of insights and processes at scale. Bernard, thanks so much for sharing today. Won't you just share how people can reach out and contact you? And then we'll also make sure we give the details across to First Tech.
Okay, perfect. So guys, there's the link. The crmteam.com/successful-sales-teams. Please, if you go to that link, we've got this presentation loaded. On that link, our contact details are on our website. And while you're at it, just tell us what our website tells you about us. I'm quite keen to know. We spoke about this in the beginning. All of these campaigns and events need to run to your website. And is your website actually built to convert. So constructive criticism, well, even negative criticism as well.
We'll take it. We'll take it all.
Yeah,
it's our opportunity to analyze, act, and then improve on that basis. So thanks so much, Bennett. I think we're going to close out and let everyone get back onto the next calls and setup that they have for meetings. I'm hoping that you're all enjoying lockdown and actually using the time productively. So the crmteam.com/successful-sales-teams. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, guys.